Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Dr. Poonam Gulalia. I am faculty with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. The paper which is being discussed is titled Fieldwork and Field Supervision. The module that I am going to be discussing with you today is titled Techniques and Guidelines for Indirect Practice. What are the techniques and guidelines which you need to keep in mind for indirect practice in the field? The outline of this module is as follows. One begins with an introduction, followed by a conceptual framework. Then I will be discussing with you the techniques which are prevalent and operationalized for indirect practice. And finally, I will be summarizing the module for you. What is the difference between direct practice in the field and indirect practice? Direct practice connotes a face-to-face contact with clients or with client groups with the purpose of supporting or strengthening them as individuals or as beneficiaries. Indirect practice, on the other hand, refers to social work's commitment to environmental modification, system change, and alleviation of social problems and concerns. This involves working with communities and larger systems and is also called macro practice. What are the major components of indirect practice or macro practice? The provision of practical or tangible help whereby a professional social worker uses resources or opportunities which exist or are potentially available for the benefit of the client or the client group becomes an immediate part of indirect practice. Socio-psychological intervention implies the modification of the attitude or behavior of significant others within the client's social environment, as stated by Grinnell and Kite way back in 1975. What are the techniques which you would need to keep in mind in relation to working with people through indirect practice methods? You would need to appreciate that goal-oriented behavior is performed in any given practice situation by a student social worker or a professional social worker, and therefore planned action is required to be undertaken by practitioners. There are simple techniques like making a first telephone contact or making a first meeting with people, and more complex ones, example, assessment of a situation, assessment of the resources present in the community, which can take different amounts of time, as has been stated by Sheffer and Horey in 2012. There is an extremely excellent literature which you can read on techniques and guidelines for indirect practice and see how they can be operationalized in the field where you are placed for field work. So what are the guidelines which you would need to keep in mind when undertaking indirect practice in the field? The first aspect which you would need to keep in mind is that they are a set of directions which are intended to influence the social worker's behavior in the field and the decisions that you would be required to undertake as part of your field work. These are a list of do's and don'ts and can be used when working with either specific types of clients or when carrying out workload management tasks as are prevalent in many agencies. What you see is a macro practice conceptual framework which has been designed by Nettle et al. In 2012, wherein the smaller circles indicate the problem, the population, and the arena. Do not miss the overlapping spaces between these smaller circles, which are part of a larger circle, which is the political and the policy context. When understanding the macro practice conceptual framework, you would need to understand the problem with which you have been approached. Based on the need assessment which you have undertaken or which the organization has undertaken, you would be able to identify a problem with which a particular subsection of the population approaches you or the agency. This subsection of the population could either be an elderly group, a group of adolescents, a group of youngsters, a group of children, a group of preschool children, or a group of women seeking help with relation to either a basic necessity in the community or in relation to their own empowerment. Depending on these understanding that you get about the problem in relation to the population that you are catering to, you will also need to keep in mind the profile of the community or the profile of the organization, which is the arena in this module for you to understand. Neither the problem or the population in the given arena is independent of either the political context or the policy context. And therefore, this conceptual framework becomes extremely understanding for you to understand macro practice in the field of social work. If you are able to get an understanding of this conceptual framework, you will be able to utilize the techniques required in indirect practice. These techniques include and require you to assist in the implementation of the intervention models which you will need to design. You will also need to understand the macro level targets of intervention as has been just mentioned to you. All these aspects need to be kept in mind by you when you design the targets of intervention at the macro level. This level could be either at the level of the agency, either at the level of the program, whether within the agency or in the community, at the level of the organization in collaboration with community leaders or community members. At another level, if the community relates to the village or the neighborhood, and whether the community is a tribal community or an urban community, all these aspects would need to be taken into consideration by you when designing the intervention processes. Macro level also includes society, whether it's the regional level, the state level, the policy level, the global level, or the immediate national level, or a combination of these. Therefore, macro practice or indirect practice is extremely complex and requires essential skills and competencies to be developed by you to undertake the same. Looking at what is community practice, to take an example, you would be required to understand that it includes the techniques which are associated with community organization and development, with social planning and social action, and with social administration. You would need to be exposed to aspects such as force field analysis, program evaluation review techniques, nominal group techniques, Delphi, and Q-sort, much of which will be discussed with you subsequently. What does program planning and evaluation entail? To begin with, you would need to understand that social planners gather the facts about community-related problems, analyze the data which is made available to them, make logical, rational, sensible decisions about which of the available planning options are the most feasible or effective to enable the community to solve its problems. There are certain steps which you would need to keep in mind when planning programs. The first is the formulation of the problem, issue, or concern. The second is conceptualization of the major alternatives which might be considered to address the issue or concern. The third is detailing of these alternatives and their potential implications. The fourth is evaluation of these alternatives and the selection of the most appropriate one. Lastly, implementation of the selected alternative is extremely important, and each stage involves evaluation as a continuous ongoing process. Coming to an extremely essential aspect of indirect practice is advocacy. What is advocacy? Advocacy is a set of targeted actions directed at decision makers in support of a specific policy issue. It includes speaking about the problem, writing about it, or acting in support of a cause. It uses a variety of organizational tactics through collective action to achieve a public policy goal and demand a change to benefit the lives of those impacted, which are the vulnerable groups of people. In fact, it is a process which involves the participation of the affected people and thereby empowers them to demand and access their rights. Advocacy includes the following: 1. Asking something of others. 2. Placing demands of people onto systems. 3. Dealing with issues and conflicts. 4th, it involves people. 5th, it enables them to create a space for public discussion. And last but not the least, it helps find solutions to these problems. Since social work is a value-oriented profession, it is very much concerned with social justice advocacy. Social justice advocacy is a value-driven process, which implies that it is based on the values of rights and justice. It has its core in an understanding and a vision of a society which respects and protects human rights, which respects and preserves the dignity of all people, regardless of their class or their caste, their race or their gender, their sexuality or their orientation. It also eradicates cruelty and abuse by protecting people from violence and humiliation caused by communities, institutions, or systems. It provides a public space for people to challenge unjust behaviors and engages people in decision-making processes that affect their lives. When speaking of advocacy, an important element is people's participation, which includes the following: 1. Ratification of decisions either formally or without process, provided opportunities for protest exist. 2. Preparing a vision and a plan to issues that affect and impact the lives of people in very many basic ways. For example, by providing basic facilities of water, building roads, or providing basic amenities. 3rd, an assessment and provision of feedback on programs which are initiated these processes and protect people from risks and harassment. They also help fix responsibility on some of society's most powerful institutions. Therefore, social justice advocacy must embrace power relationships, people's participation, and a vision of a just society. What does the advocacy process entail? Social justice advocacy process includes several elements which can be categorized as follows. 1. Resisting and challenging status quo, often using protest to find ways to engage with governance issues, including dharnas, rallies, or other such forums. 2. Raising critical issues such as inequality that otherwise would be avoided by those in power. In doing so, you would be able to set a public agenda that reflects goals and priorities. 3rd, placing issues and policy demands on political and policy-making institutions, whether they are strong or decaying, as they are not responding to the demands of the common man. 4th, asking others, whether they are individuals, groups, or institutions, to act and do something that can help create a positive change, initiating action and innovating policy solutions. While discussing the need for participation and understanding the process of social justice advocacy, one needs to understand the creation of space for public argument and advocacy. This involves actively engaging members, supporters and effective constituencies in advocacy efforts, thereby continually developing the skills and the understanding for strengthening future efforts. Any advocacy process has to begin with identifying the issue on which work has to be focused, preparing for the same, preparing a plan of action, and finally evaluating the outcome, changing strategies if required, and identifying the way ahead. In order to ensure that a social work trainee is equipped with the skills for advocacy, you would need to ideally be involved in the entire process of advocacy. So what are the preparations then required for you to play an advocacy role in any given field situation? The first step towards advocacy is to identify the issue, and in doing so, the following process can be followed. 1. Create a vision, your own picture and understanding of an ideal situation for the issue which has been identified. 2. Develop a mission. What are you or the organization that you are engaged with do to get there? 3. Identify the goals, which implies what are the significant steps which need to be taken towards achieving this mission. 4th, defining the objectives, that is the means to accomplish the vision with which you have initiated the exercise. Having done the preliminary preparation to enable you to play an advocacy role, you would also need to identify the targets, the stakeholders, and other influential people with whom you can collaborate, negotiate, and bargain for change. In this aspect of understanding macro practice or indirect practice, what are the learning requirements for you as student social workers? The student really needs to develop the skill to understand the goals and the objectives of the identified issue in partnership with the agency or the community that you are connected with. The trainee will learn the following in the process. 1. Know as best as possible about the issue. 2. Find as many sources of information as possible to address the issue. 3. Undertake research arguments for and against the concern or issue. 4th, know who supports and who opposes the issue. 5th, learn to review the relevant policies and legislations with regard to the concerned issue. 6th, conduct opinion polls or small surveys to understand the need at hand. Next, use the information which you have gained from these opinion polls or survey to inform yourselves and educate others. And lastly, develop the skill to identify all interested stakeholders. The process of developing a plan of action involves 1. Setting ground rules. 2. Asking relevant questions. 3. Sharing opinions and experiences with all stakeholders. 4. Ensuring that all opinions count. 5. Keeping it simple. 6. Brainstorming. 7. Undertaking small group exercises. 8. Accepting all ideas without debate. And last, facilitating if required. While engaging with stakeholders, you may also plan to undertake what is known as a focus group discussion, which would ensure that advocacy techniques and tools are identified, the events and opportunities are identified, the activities are planned and phased over time, and lastly, the resources and responsibilities are defined and allocated. In doing so, you would begin to learn the skills which you require to focus and identify specific areas of intervention. These skills would include participatory skills for group work and community work, and for developing an advocacy plan. It would require you to take on divergent views, facilitate consensus building, and identify common grounds for lobbying. It would also require you to network, including the development of coalitions. Finally, you would need to plan and organize events like rallies, consultations, or public hearings for the purpose of lobbying. Feedback and monitoring is an extremely crucial stage of the advocacy process. Why is it important? It is important as it forms a natural progression whereby changes in strategies with changing circumstances sometimes become inevitable. Therefore, monitoring the progress, filling the gaps, and ensuring follow-up become an extremely concurrent activity in the process of advocacy. What would this include? This would include monitoring and adjusting targets which you may have devised for the advocacy plan. It may require a change of indicators, which means identifying the required changes in strategies and related indicators. And finally, it would require you to identify further improvements in the advocacy plan. Given the background of the need and the process of social justice advocacy, I would like to mention a few current advocacy arenas with which several civil society organizations and activists are involved. These include, among others, environment, women's issues, issues of children, food security, healthcare including mental health, Dalit issues, tribal issues, and issues related to other marginalized sections including the disabled population. While undertaking and understanding macro practice, you would need to appreciate the importance of documentation in this entire venture. Professional social work activities such as administration and supervision require that documentation and publication be part of all social work activities. Research undertaken in the field by individuals, groups, practitioners, agencies, or organizations all become an essential part of this documentation process. What does it do? It ensures accountability and transparency to client populations and to organizations. It also helps in reflection on professional practice behaviors, on practice methods, on service delivery, and also enables risk management as and when applicable. Finally, it is extremely important for policy formulation and education. While relating macro practice and indirect practice to the fieldwork curriculum, one needs to highlight that it is important to include in the social work curriculum elements of advocacy which should get reflected in the academic curriculum. Many schools of social work have already included this as part of the curriculum. However, there are some departments in schools which should consider including courses so that they are reflected not just in the content of the relevant policies and laws, but also provides a critique for fieldwork practice on how they impact people in the bargain. This would help the student trainee, the social worker, and the practitioner to gather adequate theoretical knowledge on these processes. It would also be complemented by the students' fieldwork experiences in organizations where advocacy plays a part and in communities where advocacy is practiced in different arenas as described earlier. Having explained to you the details of macro practice, I would like to summarize this module by saying that it has explained how indirect practice involves working with communities and larger systems. It has also helped explain the different techniques which are used in indirect practice, that is community practice, program planning and evaluation, advocacy, and documentation. Social work profession continues to commit itself to the promotion of social justice. In doing so, Advocacy as a social work method plays a crucial role in ensuring that policies and programs reach the marginalized and excluded population, thereby empowering them. I do hope this module has been useful to you and that you will also refer to the e-text and the references to connect with this module. I look forward to further discussion with you in this regard. Thank you very much.